Okay, so one thing I wanted to start out with is just some stuff that some people sort of discovered after, what the hell? Discovered as we sort of went along playing with the extruding along a spline last week. And for some people, we sort of talked about it as I came around, and some people didn't get to talk about it at all. So I just want to go through those things real quick. And there are things about splines, and well, one of the things is about splines in general, and then it's about how that tool, that extrude tool, works. Okay, so the way we were using it last week is we would draw out our spline for whatever you need it to be. Okay. And the first thing that I don't think I've talked about, but we do need to talk about, is the idea that splines have a direction. Okay, I think I told you that Maya doesn't have splines like Illustrator does that can be completely closed. Maya's splines will always have a beginning and an end, even if they look like they don't. And, a circle in Maya has a beginning and an end, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense. But so anyhow, the way that you know that is if you look here, when you go to draw one, obviously your first point is going to be your first point, of course. So that's the way Maya shows you that is with this little square. You see, if you it's really small on my screen, but if I zoom in on it, it's not going to get any bigger. But it's a little square versus a little dot. So all these guys are dots. Even the end one is a dot. Okay, and what that's telling you is this is the first vertex of the spline. All right, and that matters in a few different scenarios, and doing this extrude trick, or whatever you want to call it, is one of them, because it's going to extrude from this first point to the end point. Okay, so one thing that we hit was a couple of people hit the scenario where they were trying to extrude, and and it's perfectly logical to think you could just grab these points, do the extrude, and it would work. But see, what you get is it goes up to the first point and then tries to extrude through it. Okay, and like I said, I mean, that's just it's easy to do because without, I didn't mention it basically. So the point is that it's going to try and extrude from this first point. So, and there's a couple of ways to fix this scenario. So you can either curves can be reversed. You can make the first curve reverse direction. You see this? So if I selected the curve and said reverse direction, and now if I went in here, see, now this vertex is the first one. So if you ever hit this situation, like another instances this happens is when you use splines as animation curves. So say you wanted something to fly along and you wanted to really direct the path. You can have objects go along a curve, or you need to go along a rail or something, just very tightly, right? Well, a great place to use that is to use a spline in your scene to do that. Well, sometimes you would say, okay, great, and you set that up and you say animate along the spline, and it's going the wrong direction. It's going backwards, So you just flip that, and boom, it's going to go the right way. So, like I said, you'll hit this, and essentially you can either turn it around or just sort of deal with it. So I before I reversed it, I could have gone in, like here it is now back where it was. So that's my first, and then grab my faces that I want to extrude, grab my spline, and extrude. And I get what I'm expecting out of it. Okay, like I said, it's just a little thing. It's something that I didn't mention that a lot of people ran into, because it's easy to run into. So, okay, then the other thing that we saw a bit of is that the idea that if I was trying to put a handle on this thing, is what it's sort of looks like. You would obviously want that handle to come down and meet some other points down at the bottom here, right? So you would you know, you'd hope you'd want that you'd want to say, okay, I want to go from these these faces down to these faces, okay. Just simply put, like, this tool doesn't work that way. Extrude is only going to go either in a direction or it's going to be guided by a path. There's no, and you can't say, well, this is my end point, okay? You just, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is it just doesn't work that way. So, you know, the easy way around that is to get close. There's a couple of ways you could do this. You could either get close and then bridge these two pieces, or you can make two pieces and then bridge, you know, like in the middle or something, where like at this part of the handle. So, for instance, we could go like this, not do these, and then there we go. Do the extrude, and then, you know, once I'm done, dump the tool. And I don't know if you guys, did anybody see this video I did online about this stuff? Okay, good. Boom, and then bridge, and there you go. So now it's attached, and you can move on. And now it's one object that's, you know, basically you just want to clean up one of the edges here, like maybe make it a little more in line with where it should be. But so that's the deal there. It's just still doesn't look right. Oh, I see. Well, whatever.
Bridge only work with faces?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm saying that, but I don't know. So I'm telling you what you want to hear, but I'm not sure. I'll check it out later. I don't think, I think so. So this one's a little off, so I'm actually just going to move this over a little bit. Okay. So anyways, but that's the basic idea. And like I said, a few people hit this, and it's, you know, it's just stuff that we left out. But it's just the nature of the extrude tool, and it's the nature of spline. So, you know, just keep in mind, if you run into weirdness about your spline, sometimes it means that it's running the wrong direction, and you can just go into curves and reverse it, or, you know, or like I said, or deal with it if that's an option in this situation. Okay. Okay. So one tool I wanted to go through, and we also hit some things or issues last week that is it's a good way to introduce another tool. Is you know, we talked about the mirror tool, and, you know, I was talking about how important it is to be, you know, right on your 0 point, your XYZ, because that's where it's gonna, by default, that's where it's gonna do the mirror, right? And we saw a couple of instances where, you know, I mean, even if you get off like that much, and I go and I do a mirror, you'll see that I'm gonna get, damn it, mirror. So I'm gonna go along my X. Okay, so you're gonna get like breaks. You see here, like by default, it's trying to merge the border, and sometimes it has a high merge for that middle. But if you see, whoa, you'll see breaks. I mean, this is a good instance of that. So, so even though it looks pretty good, and it looks, you know, it looks okay, we actually have sort of a middle. We have a bit of a problem here in the middle, okay? So one of the tools that can fix some of this stuff, especially if you're talking about like a sphere or anything like that, okay? Like, now sometimes, you know, it's good just to back up and fix it, or not fix it, but sort of you know, redo what you did. And sometimes you just want to fix what you have, okay? And one of the things to do, like this, in this instance, like if I moved on, you know, 'cause sometimes you'll do something and then you'll just move on and start doing other stuff. So you're a few more, you know, layers, detail-wise, down the road, okay? And you don't want to go back, or it's not practical to go back and redo that mirror or something like that, right? Anyways, the point is the tool that really helps this out, and I saw a little bit of this, is the the target weld tool. Target weld is awesome because there's, we talked about weld, and that, remember when we merged all of our duplicate objects together and they were right on top of each other. So, weld is great when you know that you're going to get a good output, right? Meaning, like when you have objects that are right on top of them, and you have a weld operator, which we did, or sorry, is it combine, or what the hell does Maya call it? It's not weld. Maya doesn't call it weld. Sorry. Merge. Thank you. When you do a merge, and you have like when you do objects like we were talking, like the car rim, where we made duplicates that are literally right on top of each other, right? You can have a tiny threshold. That threshold is saying how close do 2 points need to be together to assume that they're 1 point, right? So that's good when your objects are, like I said, right on top of each other, and you're just trying to pop all those things together, right? But if you have too high of a number in here, things that maybe you don't want to weld will get welded, right? So it's kind of a bit of a blunt instrument in that, sometimes you think you're doing right, and all of a sudden your edges are disappeared because, like a radius, like we did this, with the edges, and we did. I'm missing a bunch of my tools. Like a bevel, right? Well, if you have like little tiny bevels, and you have a couple of segments or something, right? Well, it'd be real easy to, especially as as something's getting finished, like if I was trying to if I was trying to weld these guys and not these guys, figuring out this threshold between the merge and things I don't want to merge, like I said, it's just really easy to accidentally merge things you don't want to merge. So getting back to what I was originally talking about is that's when your target weld tool is really handy, because the way that it works is essentially you just choose two. You can do it on vertexes or you can do it on edges, right? And basically you click one, and then you come over and you highlight another one that you're looking to weld to. Sometimes you have to zoom in pretty close. Okay, come on. No. Like so. So you can go through here and you can weld seams that are problematic. Like so.
Could you just delete the line?
You could, yeah. I mean, this is more like in a situation where it's more destructive to do that. You know what I mean? Like in this instance, like you do want to merge this so that the thing becomes symmetrical again. Like by doing this, I'll have a line right on the 0 again, and I could make changes and do a mirror, and it would be legal, and it would work out again. So it's sort of correcting a problem that. I guess in short, this is not the best example. You'll know these things when you see them, like when things get off axis, but you're trying to, fix them, or when things break or things like that. But yeah, in this instance, I could just delete that, and probably could actually just get away with deleting the other two, like so, like that, and that's back to where it should be. So I do kind of have a mess now by having those. Anyway, so that's a great tool, and it's valuable when you're trying to, close things up or get things to behave. So it works also, like I said, it works on vertexes too. So you can go vertex to vertex if you need to, sew things together for any, certain reason, like so. So yeah, it's just a good tool. Like I said, you'll know it when you see it. The other tool to fix these sort of issues about things getting off of axis is your mesh cleanup tool, which I haven't talked about before. Mesh cleanup is nice because it sort of does a lot of things that you might not even see or be aware of that are happening. Okay, so some of the things that you can do are by default it just does like overall it does almost nothing basically. So you have to sort of say, what kind of things do you want to get rid of? Like if for some reason you need to make your object no longer four-sided faces and you want to go to all polygons, you can do that, okay? Or 3-point polygon. So it does that. Like if you're feeding to some game engine that doesn't deal with non-triangles, you don't see that much anymore. Faces with more than one side. Now we've talked about this a lot, in that it's best practice to not have faces that are more than 4 sides. So this will do that kind of thing. So if you have anything in the object that has more than 4 sides, it'll fix that. Let me see if I can make one of these real quick. The cut tool, multi-cut. So I'm gonna go from here. Oops. Multi-cut here to there. Hold on. Mesh tool, so multi-cut edge. There. So I'm going to go from here to there. So I'm making, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's more than 4 sides, and then stop there. Okay, so if I go back out, so this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. If I apply that, it goes in and breaks those up for you, so that they're now, legal-ish. Concave faces. These are things that like faces that are not perfectly flat. You can pretty much ignore that. Faces with holes, that's a good one to turn on. Non-planar faces, I would leave that alone. So then this is a nice one, because sometimes you'll have edges left behind, what they call zero length edges, and you're not going to see them because they're these little tiny edges that sometimes get made. Like some of these in here could almost be zero length edges. They're useless, but if I put this like right on top of the other one, it would like so. Boom. Snap it to the other one. There. So here, this looks like one line, but there's actually a little tiny edge in there that's hidden and stuff like that. So it'll clean that stuff up. Same with faces with zero geometry areas. Faces with no, you got to leave that and invalid stuff. So you can just, once you get these settings, these settings are usually what I use and keep in there. It's just a good way to make sure that things are, once again, just it does what it says. It cleans things up. So sometimes these are things you don't even see, like these zero length edges and blah blah blah, but they can cause you problems. So it's just a good habit to get into when you're doing things like deleting your history and just sort of finalizing your objects. Okay, so let's see. So we have a couple of more tools to talk about today. Another thing I didn't talk about that can be really handy is some more selection tools. We talked a lot about different selection tools for faces that are next to each other and in rings and all that stuff by double clicking. Okay. But there's another thing called constraints in that can help you sort of get sort of make selections. Okay, in that sometimes if you have a big object and you're trying to sort of just get certain faces or certain components, you can do constraints, and the constraints tool has a lot of options, and you can sort of, it all matters what you're really trying to do. I mean, the thing I like most about it is one of the things it can do is random. Believe it or not, this comes in handy more often than you think when you're trying to sort of add random detail to objects or do selections that are random. And essentially, you just choose and you say, okay, I want to select. Let's see. So let's say I want to select quads. I want to select, and the next time I select objects, I want to select only quads in a random ratio of, like, this is select them all, this is select half of them, right? So as you go in and you select, oops, oh, wait, current and next, there it goes. So that's half of the half of the faces in the object, okay? There we go, all in next. And you know, you can do just about anything. You know, it basically feeds into whatever else you want to do with them. I mean, these are good things for like if you had a plane, you know, and you needed to make terrain, you can actually like start out really simply, and you can say, well, I want to grab, you know, quads, and I want, oops, faces. Come on. All and next selection. Like, did I make a poly plane or a, yes, I did.
You're on triangles.
Thank you. Visibility. There's actually a ton of options in here, obviously, that you can go through. You can actually select by all kinds of. What the hell's going on? Oh, sorry, I lost my way here. Neighbors, angle, vectors, distance, orientation, visibility. What the hell's going on here? There, faces, quads. Okay. So by changing, that selection, oh, here it goes. You could, you know, start moving these things up, but moving the, just by randomly, or you could do it by points. It's just a way to add randomness. I mean, this is what I found it most useful for in the past. Because you can keep doing things like this and start getting, you could, you know, move out. You can move points, you know, you could do scaling points, you could do all kinds of stuff. So once again, there's tons of options in here. And you could actually even go into like how planar are the objects next to each other. So things that are like, you know, if I turn off that and go to faces, you can actually even check like, oops. Quads, planar, no, not that. So these, so meaning objects that are like right next to each other, you know, or if they're curved along each other, you know, all these. So you can do all these different combinations to concave, planar there. So these objects are all, you know, planar next to each other, whereas these are concave, meaning like bent in. So there's, like I said, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do here, with this one being my favorite, honestly. So you just double click, make a change, and there you go. So you just choose what you wanna do. So that one's a little more abstract, but you get the idea. So okay, so and the thing you have to remember when you're done with this is you have to close and reset it, or you'll end up with some constraints on your selections. Now I can select anything I want, and it's not going to select extra ones or anything like that. Okay, and then another situation where, oops. Another situation where selections come in really handy is, you know, we've talked about how, you know, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out, you know, trying to select the right thing to do whatever the heck you're trying to do with it, right? Sometimes the quickest way to get a hold of things is through another type of geometry. By that I mean, you know, sometimes you need to do something to all the points in this selection, but the easiest way to get it, you know, instead of selecting them all, or obviously, you know, with vertexes, you know, they don't sort of give you, you know, you can do those kind of selections, but sometimes it's easiest to know, like, you know, if you're doing the top here, you know, if you grab all these, but you want to make sure you get the center. What you can do is you can convert your selection to other selection types, okay? And so if I hit Control on my keyboard, and then you know, normally right click will get you into, you know, changing your component mode, meaning, you know, faces, vertexes, edges, or whatever. But control gives you a different one, right? And then here you get your shrink selection thing, like what we talked about, like with the keyboard, where you shift and the plus or whatever. Oops, lost my selection. Okay. But with, some of the other things you get are you can grow and shrink your selection, but you can also change to, like here, you can change to vertices or you can change to edges, right? So, you know, sometimes, like I said, where this comes up is when you think, well, how the heck am I going to select, you know, all of these certain edges or make sure that I get them all, or all these points, right? Especially when you get a lot of detail going. And this is where that comes in really handy, because here I know, you know, I'm going to grow, like if I knew I wanted to play with the points of the handle here, I know I could grab, you know, all these polys, grow the selection like this, and then control, right click, and then 2 vertices, it selects the vertices. Okay, and you can even do that in the opposite direction, so I could go back to, oops, go back to faces, like so, shrink that maybe. I can get my edges, 2 edges, oops, and back to faces. So you know, any selection type can be converted to another selection type when you need it, because, like I said, lots of times the easiest way to select other things is selecting a different type of object, believe it or not. So, you know, you'll hit, you know, when you hit this, when you need this, you'll know, I guess is the best way to say it. Because right now this maybe isn't the best object to say, well, you know, because obviously it's easy to select what I have here, but lots of times it's not. So converting selection saves you a lot of time. Okay. Then another thing I wanted to quickly run over real quick is what they call live surfaces. This also goes along with the extrusion that we've been talking about. Live surfaces, you know, so say you had this object is a fairly decent one to sort of demonstrate on. If I needed a spline to run along this object, you know, drawing it on this, you know, along here would not be too bad because it's flat, but, you know, if I wanted to come along here accurately, it's going to be a pain in the butt, and, you know, or if it needed to come up and around all this stuff. So what you do to do that is you make it a live surface, and to do that, you just go to mesh, add a mesh, oh, for gosh sakes. There it is. Sorry. Make live. Actually, you can get it through your right mouse button. It's called Make Live, and live surfaces mean now that, you know, by default, if I go to draw a new spline, it's going to be either in the perspective, it's going to be on the you know, quote unquote floor, you know, the X and Z plane here, or if you go into a side view, it's going to be, you know, along that view. See how that's flat along that view, or whatever view you're in, it's going to draw it perpendicular to that. By making an object live, it breaks that. Okay, and now you're going to be drawing on whatever object is live at the current point. So by making it live, it's going to say poly cylinder is live, and that turns a funkier green color. So now when I go to draw, it's going to do its best to snap right on an object, or the object that's currently live. So this, I could actually make a spline that travels right on the object. Okay, so this is cool if, you know, if I needed to extrude a pipe or something like that right along this surface. Oops, you gotta make sure that it's traveling along it. And there we go. So now if I got rid of my oops, I'm gonna get mesh. Gosh sakes. make not live, which is really it's just great English. But so make not live makes it not live, which I guess makes sense. But that gets you back into the regular mode. But you see now I have this spline that travels right along the object, and that's cool. And it can be really handy, you know, for all kinds of things. Little lines that, you know, like a helmet that has little ribs on it, you could extrude along that, and you know that they're going to be right on the surface. Fins, little pipes, like I'm talking about, or like I was saying on this. You know, if that's what was going on here, you know, you'd get that. So it's really cool. Make live is great now. And then once you selected it, you can get it back right here. So by default, you're in no live surface mode, okay? But I can turn it back on and get my live surface going again, so that if I wanted to edit this, if it was not where it's supposed to be, it's gonna stay live on the surface, and it'll just slide along the surface. So it's pretty cool. It's kind of a cool tool, and same thing. It's one of those ones where when you don't need it every day, but it's good to know that it's there, and then you just hit make not live anymore.
How do you make it?
Make not live. Modify make not live. Now you're back making spline, making anything, whatever the heck you're making on the ground, or wherever you're at. Okay, like I said, that's just a kind of a little side tool that's handy. All right. So another thing. So the next thing I want to talk about is stats visibility. Okay. Lots of people have this on all the time, especially if you're like a games person who is worried about your polygon count in your scene. Okay. Oops. Heads-up display. So if you go into display, heads-up display, there's a bunch of stuff that you can show or hide, right? By default, it has just certain things, like it has your camera name in the bot. That's this little guy right here. It shows you if your caps lock is on or not, because sometimes that'll affect things. Names of your current asset, there's all kinds of interesting stuff that you can put in here. Your frame rate, if you happen to be animating, or actually, it's more about, I think that's about your actually the frame rate of your viewport. Anyways, one of the things that a lot of people turn on is poly count. Okay, poly count is exactly what it says. It's the current. You get a bunch of different stats. Actually, you get how many vertices are in your scene, how many edges are in your scene, how many faces, how many triangles, and how many the UVs we'll talk about later. Okay, so by default, the first column is just the whole scene, and then the second one is your current selection. I don't have anything selected, so it says 0. Once I select this guy, you see I get 880 faces. Okay, so like I said, this is important if you're trying to stay under a certain polygon count. Some people have to worry about this, some people don't. I don't turn it on a lot, but like I said, games people and things like that definitely need to do that. And it's going to feed into what we have to talk about next. And some people have seen this sort of as a kind of a sneak preview a bit. And some people haven't, and it's a big one to talk about because it really helps dictate almost everything you do in making polygon models nowadays, I should say. That's what they call subdivision surfaces. In the past, we've talked about how there are no true curves in 3D. Even a curve or an object that looks like it's circular, and that's why we're doing all this tessellation. All that, from here this thing looks circular. If I zoom all the way up, it's obviously not. It's made of facets and divisions, right? So the idea behind subdivision surfaces is that you're sort of offloading some of that smoothing and that divisioning off until render time, or usually until render time, or until you're ready to sort of break it down, okay, or smooth it out permanently, okay. And there are certain instances why you'd want to move smooth things permanently, and we'll get into that. And so right out the gate, the hotkeys to see what a smooth object is going to look like is 3 on your keyboard and then 1 to get back to it, okay. So I think you'll see what's going on here is that it's looks like it's sort of melting this object, right? So all these hard edges, you know, that I have here and at the top here are now smoothed out, right? Okay. So essentially what's happening here is Maya is doing averaging between all of its polygons that are, you know, all polygons that are next to each other are averaged with the next polygon. So what I mean by that is if I take a cube, okay, and I get rid of all of its divisions, okay, so there's literally 6 polygons, right? If I hit 3 on my keyboard, I get a reasonably perfect sphere, okay? So what's happening there, and the best way to show it is, so I'm going to delete everybody but 2 faces. So I've got 2 faces here, okay? And this is what it's doing to all faces next to each other, you know, in every object. Well, every object that you turn this onto. This face to that face to this face, blah, 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 okay? And what that's doing is if you go to mesh and you go to smooth, okay? Now this is doing it like permanently, okay? This is different than subdivision surfaces in that if I apply this, it's going to apply it just once. So it's going to say, okay, these it's going to make 4 polygon, or no, sorry, 8 polygons out of this. So what it's going to do is say, okay, if I put a good way to look at it is right here. Let me zoom up on this guy. So here it is in the side view, right? Okay, so what it's going to do is like divide between these faces, like the middle of these faces to the middle of the next face, and sort of project through. And you see what you get there. So it goes like this, and then divides again, and then the division between here and here is here and here, and then it's divided again to get this. Okay, so that's what this is doing. Let me make a copy of this real quick. Duplicate that out. Okay. So I'm going to turn it. I'm going to turn mesh smoothing on for this guy. Okay. 0. So that's 1, and then I'm gonna permanently smooth this one. Okay. So if I turn that on, 1 division, so you can see that I'm getting the same result. Okay, but this one's done in hardware, or sorry, in software or at render time. Okay, it's not changed permanently. Okay, this one's changed permanently. There are faces here, there are vertexes here that I can grab onto. Here, the only thing I can grab onto was the original, what we'll call control vertices, right? So I can move this around, but then if I turn that down, I just go back to the 2 polygons, okay? So if I keep doing that, if I say, okay, mesh smooth again, 1 more time, so it's division level means how many times should it perform it, I'll get something even smoother. So I'll get quadruple the number of faces that I had before, okay? Whereas if I went here and I said display divisions once, twice, same thing, same product, you know, same end product, but it's undoable like this, okay? And same thing, if I hit 1 on my keyboard, I get back there, 3 on my keyboard, okay? So the point of this is that you use this behavior to your advantage. Instead of doing this this hardware smoothing, or this permanent smoothing that I'm talking about here, and being stuck with, you know, all these polygons, which, so if you look here, if I select this guy, I'm at 32 faces, and I'm over here, I'm at 32 faces, but not really, because once I turn it off, I'm at 2 faces, okay? So what that means is you can control a whole lot more sort of virtual polygons with a lot less actual detail, right? Okay, so you know, that means that, you know, a square like this, that's, you know, with no divisions like that, when smooth, is, you know, gives you this, gives you a little whatever you want to call it, like a javelin or something, and then I could turn it up from there. So, okay, so, and like I said, the point of all this is it you learning to then work with the way that they behave for your own benefit, okay? In that, you know, a low res, and this is why a lot of the things we've been making, you know, like, you know, I talked about when we were doing revolving and things, you know, I was saying, you know, we can do like, you know, 24 divisions, where it's like, you know, in most usage, you'd see these facets and it doesn't look smooth, you know, it doesn't look smooth, because the idea is, you know, you're eventually going to run it through smoothing, and you're going to get, I'm actually going to break this up there, you know, you're going to get a really, really smooth object, because at render time, this smoothing is going to go on, and we'll get into how that's turned on later down the road. The key is just to sort of, you know, be aware of it and what you can do with it as you're modeling, and I'll show you where all those good stuff comes, where all that good stuff comes from. So this object, you know, if I was going for a, you know, sort of more of a mug scenario or something like that, you know, this is what I'm going to get, right? I'm going to get smoothed edges. I'm going to get on my handle, right? Well, if I needed things to be, if I needed all this stuff to be harder edge, you know, this is where sort of adding those edges and adding that detail come into play, and it's not hard. It's just basically sort of being aware of it and where to put it and how to put it. So, okay, so we saw that these squares, if I come back here and I go to my square, or my 2 faces that we've smoothed out with the smooth command here, somewhere, mesh smooth, okay, whereas this one is still just a quote-unquote like virtual smoothing. Hold on. There it is. So if I turn it off, I get that. If I don't, so the cool thing with Maya is that you can mess with this while it's still smooth and go back and forth between the 1 and the 3, right? So that means if I go in here and I want to start doing something more interesting with it by adding in edge loops, you know, like this, okay. When I smooth this, since these are so close together, when it goes to smooth these two, there's a tightness that you're going to get that it will hold. And I guess that's not a good example. Let me do it at the corner. Okay, so if I put it at the corner and hit that, see, so it's smoothing from here to here. Before, when it was just smoothing 2 big polygons, it did a big, like, you know, arcing motion like this, because it's, you know, when you average those faces together, that's what you get. Whereas when you average damn it, there we go. When you average this, okay, I'm getting pissed. This face and this face, because they're next to each other, you're going to get a small, you know, you're going to get the same thing here. You're going to get an arc, but you're going to get a small arc because it's, you know, they're right, you know, they're close to each other, right? So let me get rid of my edges here. These are just confusing. like this. Okay, so they're right on top of each other like so. Okay, so like I said, you know, when it's doing this, but in a really small scale down here, because it's, like I said, it's averaging between, you know, it's averaging between this face and this face. Well, they're right on top of each other, so it's going to be nice and it's going to just be flat, right? But when it goes here and averages between these two, okay, it's going to essentially put this same curve, but down and through there. So if I hit 3, you see there's a curve in there, but it's nice and smooth and tiny, okay? And here, I'll do the hardware, or I'll do the command style one to show you what it's doing. So I'm duplicating out, and I'm just going to do smooth. Okay, so this is the heart, or this is actually what it's doing. I'll give it 2 divisions. There we go. But it's hard to zoom in on something that small. There we go. Okay. So you see those curves that it's doing. Okay, that's what it's doing over here. But when I hit 3, it's just sort of not showing it to me. So the point of, you know, not doing it this way is, now if I needed to change this, you know, and I moved, you know, say that this needed like a nice sort of lump in the middle here or something, you know, like you do have some tools to do that. I mean, you could say, I'm going to grab some of this and move it. Okay, but you know, you get this, and you could turn your smooth, sorry, no, not your smooth, but your soft selection on, and you know, that's kind of doing it, but it's still sharp, right? With subdivision surfaces, I could come in here, I could just add in, turn off my thing, mesh, insert edge loop, just basically cut. Oops. Cut this, grab these points that are here, move them out like so, you know, and it's handling it. So here's the, you know, not that attractive, you know, hard edges, but with the smooth on, 3 on my keyboard, I get a really nice, the radius edge isn't being squashed or stretched or anything like that. I'm getting just perfectly smooth stuff from here to there, and you know, whatever I need to do with it. So, you know, obviously changing this, all I would be doing previously, if I'm not using subdivision services, is to just keep throwing more detail at it, meaning like, you know, going in and smoothing it. Oops, wrong object. Going in and smoothing it again, you know, which helps, but it's still jaggy, still doesn't look good. I mean, it's just not, this is the way that it was done before this stuff came online, and it's just the way that things are done. I mean, it's just such a cleaner and easier way to work, that because I can also produce, you know, multiple versions. You know, say I needed to feed something where, okay, I needed a copy that's at 3 divisions. I need another copy that's at, oops, that's at 1 division. That's got more detail, but not incredible detail. You know, so it's pretty much, you know, it's not limitless, you know, because every time you go up another level, you're quadrupling the number of polygons here. Okay. So anyway, so the point is that it's just, you know, you can make your objects the same way that you can describe curves and things like that with splines with very few points. You know, like, you know, of course you could draw these out yourself, or I could, you know, go like this, go like that, go like that, go like that. So it's kind of the same idea, but for geometry, okay? And then it's just, you know, so from there, it's just about adding detail, you know, continuing to refine and add detail or remove detail, using the tools that we've been learning about, you know, getting rid of edges, adding edges. You know, your extrusions are really handy. Like, for instance, you know, if I was going to make a bottle or whatever out of this, you know, all I'd have to do, you know, is take my top faces here. No, it's not going to do that. Grab all my top faces. Maybe I can paint this. There we go. Okay, and I could extrude them in, and then extrude them down. So okay, so then if I went to smooth this, you know, I'm going to get that.
Andy, what was the hotkey for that?
1 and 3. 1 turns it off, 3 turns it on. Okay, and it's just displaying it for you. It's something later when we get into rendering, I'll show you how it gets sort of turned on at render time. But for here, it's just 1 and 3, and it's.
I meant for the extrude.
Just holding down shift and any other movement, any other transform, a scaling, anything, scaling, rotating, and moving, all do that. When you hold down shift, so like I'm still in move mode here, you see?
Yeah.
Okay, the W on the key. If I hold down shift, see how it changes to extrude? So I can make more, I can just keep doing it until I need to stop or whatever. Okay? So okay, so the point of this is that the great thing about these kind of tools is that, okay, so now I have this, and you know, this is really rounded. Okay, it's really easy to make this sharper, because as you saw over here, you know, making things sharper is just about adding a little more detail where you need it. So I just have a couple of faces here, so that instead of getting a giant round, I get a little round. Okay, so you know, all I need to do to get the same thing out of it is go in and do my favorite little add mesh loop tool, right? So by putting that really close here and putting that real close there, that means that when it goes to smooth, it's going to smooth through this, and these two faces are, you know, they're exactly planar, whereas it's going to smooth through these two, and it's going to put my radius right here. Okay, so I get a nice, really nice looking sharp fillet on that edge, right? Because before, remember what I got was this, you know, that, you know, maybe that's what you want in this, you know, in some scenarios, but, you know, if I really want that nice sharp fillet, I'm going to go like that. I'm going to put another one here, and I got a gorgeous, really sharp edge.
So does that mean that, like, beveling things is kind of not worth your time?
It matters. It matters which way you're trying to, what you're trying to get to. And in a lot of ways, yeah, it's not worth your time. I mean, it is. I mean, beveling is really good because the way I'm doing here is just going to throw in one new edge loop per. But say I wanted, you know, over here, I'm going to go back to 1. Say this needed to be crazy sharp, right? Like, you know, this edge for some reason needed to be crazy sharp. But remember, we talked about how, like, you know, almost no object doesn't have at least some kind of a tiny radius on it, and those are the things that really, that's the detail that when it's in there, you notice, you know, you barely perceptively notice that it's there. So if you do that, what you'll get, now you can do that by hand, of course, you know, by just using that same tool, right, and just putting these guys like really close to each other like that, right? Oop. Like that. You know, but it's easy to miss, obviously, like I'm doing here. So, you know, this should be so that's a pretty sharp edge, but by doing multiples, really a small, there it goes, a small radius. Hold on, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to go back to edge mode. I go to, and I'm going to do that bevel with, usually you want to do it with a couple of segments, right? And really small, I'd say 0.05 in this instance, or maybe 0.02. Okay, so that's going to give me a, you know, two, see that? So it's divided, and you could even go to 3 segments like that. Okay, and now when I do that smoothing, it's really, really...
Okay. So like for beveling edges, that's kind of the best use of it is when you really need to be really precise.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't want to have to like zoom in and zoom in. And
yeah,
zoom in.
or honestly, it's actually still really good if, for instance, like at the bottom here, if I wanted to, well, no, I would still just put edge loops in there. It still has its uses, but I'd say that more likely than not, it's more about, see that? So there's a really sharp radius right in there, and that's, you know, a renderer will pick up that little doodad, you know, at the right time, and it'll look really nice. So, you know, you zoom out here, and yeah, it looks really sharp, but there actually is that detail in there that's really nice, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the thing that to keep in mind for sure is those are absolutely the last steps, because now, you know, if I needed to make changes to this, you know, this edge, before when it was just one edge, it was obviously easy to pick up. Now it's like, you know, real hard to get in there and make sure you get them all. Let's see, if I needed to like shift this guy up, in fact, I probably missed, no, I got them all, but you see what I'm saying? Like all those kind of details are, you know, like I said, literally the last thing that you do. But so yeah, so the key is just to sort of is to play with and get used to what you get out of the edges that you add. Okay, meaning, you know, if I wanted to, you know, say I was rounding this bottom off, but I wanted, you know, up here you saw where we did, you know, it's a very tight bevel, so that we got a sharp-ish edge, but with like a nice radius on it. Okay, you know, and now this bottom, you know, it is not great, and this is the kind of stuff that you get out of 3 edge polygons versus quads, and this is why I think you'll see this is why, you know, we've you know, why I've stressed a lot, you know, why we're trying to keep things in quads and why we're trying to not get weird divisions, because, you know, if I had a weird edge loop, okay, when you go to add those that extra detail, if it breaks, or remember, you know, if we don't have good flows that go, you know, top to bottom or around or whatever, if you can't trust what you've got here, like this is a perfect example, you know, if it breaks, I mean, this is what it is because it's the way it's constructed, but like, you know, let's see, I guess we have some weird stuff going on through here, like, you know, I couldn't play with this, I could play with that one. Yeah, that one somehow kind of works. Oh, it goes around and around. So, because if I'm putting in edge loops or extra, you know, adding in edge loops like this, you know, they need to be able to go all the way around, or, you know, you're going to get stuff like, you know, if it pops and doesn't work quite properly, it's all right. Edge, you know, say I get rid of that one. When I smooth it, obviously you're going to get some really weird stuff. So that's why the construction with, you know, good four-sided polygons and good edge loops that go around, and the good rings that go all the way around like this, you know, make it really easy to do these kind of edits, because it works great. So now if I smooth this, I get a more of a rounded edge, but I can move it live and just decide what I want to do. If I needed these to be close, or you know, sort of tighter, I can just go like this, let that go, it'll pop nice and tight, you know, because these are a little mushy, you know, they're like just kind of, you know, and sometimes that might be fine, that might be what you're looking for, but to tighten that up, you just add a loop, maybe add another one to get it even closer, and now, you know, instead of what I have on the other side, this bloopy stuff, I have really nice graceful sort of transition from the handle to the other piece. Okay.
How do you add more loops?
Mesh tools, insert edge loop is my favorite. There's a couple that because that one's gonna, it's gonna literally add a loop along any continuous ring that it can find, right? So you can, like I said, if we have a break somewhere, it's gonna mess up. So that's why those tessellation settings that we were sweating and revolving objects and things like that, that's why they were important, so that when we go in here, and it actually shows you a preview, which is nice. Like, what the hell's going on here? Mine's wigging, sorry. Oh, when in doubt, go back out. Edge, boom. Insert edge loop. There. So it gives you a, it gives you a preview. You see the green loop. It shows you in like an X-ray mode, where it's going. And if you saw a break, around the back or something like that, you'd know that it's probably not going to work. Okay. And it only re-smooths the object when you let go. So that's when you start. That's when you see. When you see what you did. Okay. Let's see here. That's another. So okay, so I didn't show you where you can make changes to this to the settings here in the what's going to be the second every object. Even if I delete the history on this guy, freeze it and all that stuff, it's going to have. This is, remember, this the first one, the first tab is always going to be just about moving the object around, rotating it, whatever the heck it is. It's where it's at in space. The second tab is a bunch of stuff about just different attributes that can get put on the object, and one of them is down here, is smooth mesh. Okay, you can. Ooh, it just spit on my screen. So you can choose what level you'd like it at. So depending on what you're working on, like when things get really dense, maybe 1 is enough. So that's the preview. 2 obviously makes it, 2 is really nice, and I think that might be the default, okay? But if you need to go to 3, see the difference between 2 and 3 is very minor. You can actually almost not detect it. So, but it also, if you go see over here, when it's off, 1400 polygons, 5,600, 22,000, and 90,000. So you see how quick it is to dump way up into higher numbers, and it obviously taxes your machine and all that stuff. So yeah, so like I said, everything that you can do with polygons before feed into this. They feed into making these types of objects, because when we made our revolutions, we actually were making objects that were kind of light, because the lighter you can make it, the more flexibility you have to edit it as you go, right? As you start adding this detail, the less less easy it's going to be to move some of these points. Obviously. Now that I have, if I turn this off, now that I have all this detail, making changes to this corner is going to require grabbing more edges, and if I needed to round that off, that's not the end of the world. But in through here, like I said, when I did this and put a whole bunch of edges in there, moving all this, it's just more clicks. So like. Before I did that, before I put these smooths in there, I had this, right? So I could go, okay, great. And I could say, okay, I like this, I want this to be maybe a little bloopier at the start, or circular or whatever at the start of the handle, But then I know down the road I'm going to make this sharper like this, right? So, you would mess with that while it's still in its sort of its lowest resolution stage, so because it's just easier, so because you're just trying, you're basically just trying to save clicks. You're trying to not have to spend your day carefully selecting things because you've put so much stuff in there. So, like I said, this is why we made models that look like this, that are chunky, that don't look that great, because with the intention of going to this, and it looks great, because this is what the render is going to see when you go to make actual images. This is what it's going to see, not this. This is for you to see and how to describe this and keep things simple. This is for the renderer to see and look and see all these nice, see a nice edge here and see a nice edge there and all that good stuff. So this is a big one. I mean, this is a big. Does anybody have any questions on this methodology or how this works or why you do this or anything about this? This is, like I said, this is a pretty important one. No questions? Do you understand? Does it make sense? Does the idea of the averaging of polygons make sense? The way that it's, going between, each polygon that's next to each other are, like I said, you can kind of think of it as sort of like melting in a way, and sort of not like melting, I guess, because that's sort of what it's like, so you're selectively melting and not, you're saying, hey, I want this part to be, I want, certain parts to be nice and crisp, and I want other parts to, melt smoothly together like this, and just remember that, for every piece of detail you add, it's something you might have to move down the line if you're not making changes at that, that high level like we have here, The good news is that it's, no matter what, you're still, this object is still very, very simple compared to if, what you're getting out of it is this, like this, doing that is virtually this, right? So it's like, if you went to make a change at this, or, at this level, it would be a complete pain in the butt, and obviously be very jaggy. Like if we were doing this at the pure polygon level, trying to change the arc of this thing would be next to impossible. Whereas, going back to here, in fact, I could do without this and still get the same thing. I could go boom, boom, and I could blow this way out, and I would get that, and I could maybe make this one behave a little more. And, now I've made a massive change, whereas here, changing all this, you could probably use the soft selection tool and it would look okay. But here, I made a really vast change without a lot of pain, and that's why we use this. It's really nice. It makes life really, really easy, because you get both high detail and high crispness when you want it, but also massive smoothness when you want that. So I would definitely play with this and turn it on and just mess with some faces and see what you get. There's all kinds of. It's just something you need to get used to, but I think it makes sense really quickly, and you see what you need to do, to keep things crisp, but also not when you don't want to. So here it's going to round these little edges off because there's not much there, but if I keep extruding just a tiny amount, I'm going to get nice sharp edges, okay? Like crazy sharp edges. So, instead of inserting them here, I did this at sort of extrude time, and now I get these little beams, or little, whatever you want to call them, little doodads, but they come right out of here. Okay? It's, like I said, it's literally just something to play with and get used to, and I think you'll really like them, because it makes making more complex things a whole lot easier. So, are you sure no one has a question on this? Like, this seems like something that would be kind of confusing. No? Okay. Well, cool. So it's 1 and 3 on your keyboard, and it'll go back and forth. We'll come back to it about how you turn it on for rendering, but I would take any of the objects you made previously, like for maybe the other projects, and turn them on and see what you get. I mean, in theory, some of your objects are going to look better. Some of them might look sort of melted, like we've seen. But that's a perfect, example of why you might want to go in and add some more edge loops, to hold that detail. If you made a coffee cup out of a tube, previously, and it looked fine, like this, and it looked. And I did this in the other end, when I did the other thing. But, if this was your coffee cup before, and it's like, oh, that's great, but you turn it on and it dies, it's like, well, then all you need to do is, go in, damn it, insert some loops, I call these like holding loops, because they sort of hold those edges, boom, 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 and now you've got a really nice. You got that nice crisp edge back, and in fact it's better because it's just held very nicely. The other quick edge adding tool that I sort of played with, and I think we talked about this before, is the multi-cut. Multi-cut allows you to go from basically anywhere you want, whereas the edge loop tool is just adding a loop through one good-looking ring, edge loop that you have. It's adding another one of these loops to any contiguous set of edges that are in what they call a ring here. That this is the oops. So this is edges in this configuration, parallel to parallel to each other. That's a ring, and whereas this is a loop, obviously, because it goes in a complete loop. So it's only going to put edges in where there's a complete loop. This tool, the multi-cut tool, will do anything you like. So it's sort of a little more dangerous in a way, but sometimes you need it. So you can click in the middle of an edge and go to the next edge. See, it's drew a straight line through that, right? Then to the next edge and next. So it's good, but it's making it's making five-sided polygons, and it's potentially dangerous. Like I said, I mean, not really, but it makes it possible to mess up your geometry pretty well. So this is still legal because now I have like a good loop, but it's obviously really jaggy and weird, but sometimes that's what you need. Okay.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So, say you're using your multi-cut to actually make a loop, and you want to straighten it out, would you just go into a different perspective and select all of them out and snap to a grid, or how?
No, I just scale them. Like if it's possible, if that's legal here, like here's that, if it was really bad, like if this was really jaggy, I just grab the whole loop, scale it to 0. Now it's flat. Sometimes this doesn't work, and sometimes it does, depending on what your geometry is like. So yeah, I would highly suggest just taking something like from the first or the second assignment, turning that on and seeing where where you can make improvements if it was turned into a subdivision object. I think it'll show up really quickly. Did I show you guys the make circle command? I can't remember if I did. Did we talk about make circle to everybody, or did I just get a few people about that? I did? Okay. Let me run through it real quick again, because it becomes really apparent here now that we're using these the subdivision surfaces. There's a really great command, and it can't hurt to go through it again. and it's brand new to Maya 18. And what it does is it takes any selection of faces, like you could do a whole bunch of them. I think it does edges too, actually. And yeah, so it does edges too, and it makes it into, as close as it can, a perfect circle, right? And sometimes it's going to be twisted, which I can. There we go. You can twist back into place if you need to. It does its best guess to try and turn that in. So the beauty about this is, you know, trying to make a perfect circle like here by just moving points, you know, would be really, really difficult, okay? Because you're on an angle, like you're making a circle, you know, obviously out of this, or, you know, getting another circle out of this bottom or this top or anything like that. But if I, you know, needed a little port here for some reason or another, you know, it'd be next to impossible to get these guys into a perfect circle, right? So it handles that for you, and it's, like I said, it's really, really handy because it's all legal. It creates, you know, only 4-point polygons here. Oh, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, only 4-point polygons that are going to smooth properly and everything, and you can do anything you would like with them. And when you go to smooth it, you get just a beautiful. This has always been a real challenge using this kind of modeling, is to do things like this where you're looking for a hard model, but you're looking for kind of a graceful, perfect circle out of it without, you know, having some really weird looking, you know, bad looking faces and all that stuff. So that's super cool. And looping back around to what I was talking about with, oh no, we talked about multi-cut. So multi-cut, you can just keep cutting through whatever you need to cut through, and you know, it's kind of a blunt instrument, but it works well when you need it. Like, you know, this kind of scenario where you wanted to go like this, and, you know, you'd have to. Sometimes it's good when you get. Let's see, we'll cut here. So, okay, so in here I've made, like, this is not really kosher anymore, and it's going to smooth oddly, so you better get in there. It may smooth okay. But you see what I'm saying? If you needed to put some kind of an irregular shape, like this is probably going to be pretty gross when I do it. Let's see. I don't know what you would want this shape for, but, you know, if I just needed that out of it, there it is. Okay. So yeah, so that's, like I said, this is a big one, because this is the final product of a whole lot of you know, where you go with your models, because from here, you know, you're just basically feeding this into surfacing and, you know, setting it up for painting it or mapping it or whatever the heck needs to happen, and then on to rendering. So yeah, this is kind of a big one. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Like I said, I highly recommend just kicking it around 1 and 3 on your keyboard. If you need to up the amount, go to your second tab. Oops, wait. Oh wait. No. Here. That's the extrude. Sorry. Yeah. Your shape. Sorry, your shape node. That's what it is. So it's always going to be in your shape node. Play with the divisions if you need to bump them up, and like I said, just kick it around. It's a big one. It's really important to know it, and you know, keep an eye out for you know, how you would use it to get to something that you're trying to make. You know, yeah, I think that's most of it. It's a great tool. That's all I can tell you. It's really, really important to understand how it works and to make efficient models, because one thing, you know, other things is that the beauty of it is that instead of sort of needing more and more detail, lots of times you can get rid of detail, you know, in the same way that a spline, you know, sometimes you don't even need the number of points that you have along a spline. Like in this instance, I could probably, like, Okay, I have this shape. I could probably make the same shape. Like this guy probably isn't necessary because I could pull this one out and get the same kind of idea. Okay, it's the same idea. It's the same thing with these with subdivision surfaces, in that I got this shape. Oop, wait, is that the scan? Oh, that's the crushed one. So any time where things aren't necessary, and sometimes they're not, like along my handle here, like getting rid of this edge because it doesn't really do anything is barely going to change the shape, and that's why I was able to get rid of some of these, maybe even just move some into place to replace other ones, because the simpler that you have it, the easier big changes are to make. Okay, so like I said, I want this area to be as smooth as possible, so I'm going to use as little as I can, whereas here I got lots of edges because I want this to be nice and tight in through here. And then it's nice and smooth. So yeah, so that's it. Like I said, please play with them. Next week we'll actually do, we'll actually sort of have more of an assignment to do with them, but I highly recommend kicking them around and just seeing how they behave as you add more detail and take away detail and move edges next to each other and move them away from each other. And I think it'll make sense really quick, and I think you'll see why they're handy, why they're awesome.